This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 197, The Best Kept Secret for Amplifying Your Content. Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you grow your tribe and your bottom line through insanely good content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is October 20th, 2016. Hello, or as we say in Texas, howdy, and thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. If today's episode sounds a little bit different, it's because I am recording it on the road. Today I am in beautiful Tyler, Texas to speak at the IABC East Texas chapter. So I am in my happy little hotel room recording this on my iPhone. Okay, just a reminder, this podcast is available on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and now Google Play Music. So if you like what you hear, feel free to click on over and subscribe. Also remember that my new book, The Content Marketing Coach, Everything You Need to Get in the Game and Win, is now available on Amazon in book and Kindle format. And you can also download a free chapter. Go to resonancecontent.com/book, and just above the Order Now button is a link that said download a free chapter. Just click there to get yours today. Okay, episode 197. Wow, we are barreling toward 200 episodes. Absolutely incredible. Last week, we shared some strategies for rocking your internal content marketing strategy for 2017. It is that time of year, and we have got to remember that internal side of content marketing as well. If you happen to miss that episode, feel free to feel free to check it out on iTunes or Stitcher or our various other venues or via the RSS feed. This week, I'm going to be sharing the best kept secret for amplifying your brand's content. But first, it's time to check in with our news feed for this week's rundown of news you can use. Some news from Twitter to kick off today's news feed. Twitter is opening up Periscope to devices other than smartphones and tablets. The new feature is called Periscope Producer, and it allows users, and I'm going to quote here from their blog post, allows users to stream high-quality live video from external sources, including streaming software, hardware encoders, and professional cameras on Periscope and Twitter. And it is currently available via request. Not sure how they decide who gets access at this point, but if you go to, I'm going to give you the URL here. If you go to t.co/Periscope Producer, all one word. So t.co/Periscope Producer. That will get you to the forum where you can request access to Periscope Producer. And I will also, of course, include the link in the blog post for this episode. Snapchat is allowing, and I cannot speak today, my goodness. Snapchat is announcing some changes to its user experience, specifically allowing users to customize their story viewing. They have announced that the auto advance feature will be removed, so the app will no longer automatically advance from one story to the next. And Snapchat is also adding a new story playlist feature, which gives users the option to select the stories, quoting again here, to select the stories you want to watch and seamlessly view them full screen in the order you selected them. These new features are being rolled out in stages and will soon be available to all users. Okay, our content hit of the week comes from the Convince and Convert blog, which you might know as Jay Bear's operation. This is a post titled, Why Shameless Content Marketing is the Only Marketing That Works. And this was written by Ben Plomion. Ben, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Plomion. And I thought this was an interesting post because what he points out is that sometimes we are a little bit shy about putting our brands front and center in our content. You know, we're so sensitive about that, content is not promotion thing that we're sometimes a little bit too shy about associating our brands with our content. But what Ben does in this article is he starts by pointing out the classic examples of the Guinness Book of World Records and the Michelin Guide. And these were two very strong brands who created content, and that content became a sought after product in itself. And they were definitely not shy about having their brands, splattered across the cover. It's the Guinness Book of World Records. It's the Michelin Guide. That's how we know them today. And then he goes on to discuss some more contemporary examples of what he calls shameless content marketing. And all he means by shameless is that the brand is very prominent. There is no question about where this content comes from and which brand it's associated with. And he reminds us that content marketing is, after all, marketing. Anyway, it's an excellent post, and I will, of course, provide the link in the blog post for this episode. Okay, that's it for this week's update. If you stumble across something you think might be of interest to your fellow content marketers, please tweet it to me at Rach Parker so that we can share. Now it's time for this week's Spotlight segment, the best kept secret for amplifying your content. So many people come to me and they say, Rachel, we're doing great things on our LinkedIn page and our Facebook page and our corporate Twitter account. How can we amplify that? How can we get it in front of more people? So today I'm going to share with you the best kept secret for amplifying your content. And I'm not going to leave you in suspense. I'm just going to tell you right now. It is mobilizing your own employees, the employees that work for your company. And it's almost like, when I mention this, it's almost like, well, yeah, duh. But I'm surprised how many brands overlook it. And I think the thing is, they just kind of assume that their employees are amplifying their content. But that is, just like with all content marketing, that's got to be a relationship that we cultivate. And it's funny, in thinking about this topic, I was thinking about my last corporate job. I worked for an electricity provider, and they were always after us to share their latest marketing campaigns. It's like, no, I'm not going to go on social media and say, hey, sign up for this great electricity plan. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be your marketing bullhorn. But I have to say, if they had created some really irresistible content, which they did not, because everything had to go through 5 different committees, and by the time it got done, it was so watered down. But that's another topic for another day. If they had created some really, really fantastic content, I would have been happy to share it. And I think most people feel the same way. So why bother? Why put the time and effort into mobilizing your employees to be amplifying that content, sharing those Facebook posts, sharing those tweets? Even, LinkedIn even gives you a nod if you like something. If you go to your LinkedIn feed, it will say, so and so liked this post, and that's showing up in my feed because someone in my among my connections liked something that they saw. So why put the time and effort? Number one reason is that Facebook and LinkedIn give preference to personal posts over page posts, and that is a fact. It could be the exact same content, and if it is shared on a Facebook or LinkedIn page versus being shared by a person on LinkedIn or Facebook, the personal post will get tons more impressions, more visibility. And that makes sense because, we go to these sites, Facebook more so than LinkedIn, but we go to see what's going on with people. What's happening to the people who are in my network. We don't necessarily go to see what Gatorade wants me to read today. What does Sally Ann, who works at Gatorade, what is she interested in today? So that's the more scientific version, the more analytical version. But the second reason to put the time and effort into mobilizing your employees to amplify that content is more personal. It's the trust factor. People trust people more than they trust brands. That is a fact of human nature that I don't believe will ever change. So when I see something, when I see a post, say I'm on LinkedIn and I see a post by a brand that I follow, I might say, oh, that's interesting. But if I see a post by a person talking about the same thing, I am more inclined to put more trust in that personal endorsement. And that's just human nature. We trust people. So we need to tap into that very powerful resource that is at our fingertips, and that is the ability to mobilize those employees to share that content. So how do we do that? And I got to say, it depends on your organization. It depends how your team communicates, how you get information out there, how much trust there is. Again, just the trust factor in what comes down from corporate, and it also comes down to how your employees feel about your organization. Some organizations have very pumped up workforces, and all you would need to do is say, "Hey, we need your help sharing this stuff," and they will be on it like nobody's business. They are so they're so excited. Not every organization has that, so that's something to consider as well. One thing that you might want to consider is incorporating social elements into your intranet. Now, we talked about intranet a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was on the blog. It wasn't on the podcast. But what you can do is take your intranet and embed your social feeds. You can embed what you're sharing on Facebook, on Twitter, and LinkedIn. You could do a highlighted featured post of the day and encourage employees to share it. There are all kinds of things that you can do. So it might be worth having a conversation with the IT guys who run your intranet to see the possibilities that are available. Now, this of course assumes that your intranet is a daily destination for your employees. That is not always the case. I have worked several corporate jobs, and I've seen some really bad intranets. It's like, okay, I will go there when I absolutely have to download a change form for my benefits, but it's not something I'm going to pursue on a daily basis. So if your intranet is not a daily destination, then that's actually something else to consider. So that's one way we can do it. Another way we can do it is email. There are some creative ways to reach out to the employees in your company via email to be sharing this content and encouraging their participation. And I recently had a client who was coming up against this issue on LinkedIn. They said, we're putting out some great content. We're just not getting a whole lot of impressions. And so what happened was I suggested, okay, well, really encourage your employees to share it. Send them out an email saying, hey, this post we're really proud of. We want you guys to share it, and encourage them to do that. Well, I look at their analytics every month, and I noticed one month a huge spike in impressions on LinkedIn, and they were heavens forfend, doing what I had asked them to. And, I was talking to the marketing director. I said, yeah, this is great. You're getting so many more impressions. And he said, well, yeah, but, half of those shares came from our employees. And I said, yeah, and the other half came from people outside your company, and that is expanding your brand footprint. That is one more person getting eyeballs onto your content. And I had another client, a different client that I worked with, and they were babies on LinkedIn. They were just getting used to how it works. So what I would do is, when I would post it for them on LinkedIn, I would send them an email, and this would go to like the marketing director and a couple of other people, and I would send them an email with the link to the post from their page and detailed instructions on how to share it. So I had to kind of help them understand and give them very detailed instructions. So it also depends how sophisticated, or I would say how active your employees are. If someone's not really comfortable on LinkedIn, then you don't need to be in their face saying, hey, share this, share this, share this. You want to work with the employees who are active, who understand how it works, who understand the importance of it. So, remember, your employees have the potential to be your most powerful brand advocates, especially out there on social media. But we need to guide them, and we need to get them on board. We need to tell them. We need to ask them, rather. We need to ask them, hey, we need your help amplifying this content. We're producing some great content. We want to get in front of more people so that it can be helping more people solve their problems. Would you help us to do that? And then put in place a process for getting them on board on a consistent basis. Now, you don't want to go broadcasting, hey, here's a tweet we just put out. You should share it. You want to be very selective, and you want to be very mindful of their time, but start thinking about it strategically and how to get your employees on board and what where you need their support most, and then put together a strategy for that. And then, of course, you want to incorporate that into your internal content marketing strategy. Okay, if you have any questions or want to add to the conversation, I would love to hear from you. And the best way to reach me is through the website, resonancecontent.com, or you can always tweet me at @RachParker. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. In last week's tip, we talked about building a culture of content in your organization. And specifically, we talked about how this is not something you can do overnight. You cannot impose a cultural change overnight. It's not like your CEO can get on the loudspeaker and announce, "We are now a culture of content." That is all. But one thing we can do is leverage the concept of influencer marketing, but turned inward. And what reminded me of this is back in my corporate days, sometimes when we had a major initiative, especially a major internal initiative, what leadership would do is they would identify ambassadors in every department. And this was a person who was very familiar with what was going on, and they were tapped to be the liaison between the department and what was going on with this initiative. So they would convey information, they would answer questions, they would basically be the human face of the program. And we can actually do that with content marketing. Think about it. What if you had in every department of your company a content ambassador who was tasked with making sure that, number one, the department is aware of what's going on content-wise and is bought into the whole content amplification plan. And number two, they can also, on the flip side, they can be helping bubble up content ideas that originate in the department. So if your R&D team is working on something really, really cool, that of course is not a trade secret that you wouldn't mind sharing in some content, that those liaisons, those ambassadors can be the linchpin to identify opportunities for content and help that get through the proper channels. So now, these folks would have to be chosen very carefully. You don't want to randomly select people to be your content ambassadors. They have got to be just natural-born content enthusiasts. And it might take a while to identify these people. They might be the ones who are already sharing your content. They might be the ones who are commenting on your blog post. It might take some doing to identify who these people are, but it is worth the time and effort because they can make a tremendous difference in building that culture of content. So if you're looking ways to get your organization more involved in your content mission, think about creating some ambassadors and see what happens. Okay, campers, that is it for me today from beautiful Tyler, Texas. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. And if you like what you've heard, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play Music or via our RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. I would so appreciate it. Also remember that my new book, The Content Marketing Coach, Everything You Need to Get in the Game and Win, is now available in book and Kindle format on Amazon. To learn more about the book and to download a free chapter, visit resonancecontent.com/book. As you know, I always like to leave you with a quote, and today's comes from Jay Baer. He once said, quote, "Content is the emotional and informational bridge between commerce and consumer," unquote. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you again next week. Take care.